And as always, I have another amazing guest. I have a lot of words to describe my next guest. He's a friend first and foremost. He's a executive leadership in your company, right?
That's a good way to put it.
You're a veteran.
Agreed.
You're a father. You're a husband, and you're just all around amazing person. And I'm glad I could bring you to my listeners. So without any delay, let me introduce Mr. John Burns. How you doing, Mr. Burns?
I am doing well, sir. How are you doing, Gunny Ramos?
Hey, I'm doing amazing. I'm doing amazing. So I'll give it away. Me and you were friends. We met in the Marine Corps, and we just recently kind of got back in touch.
In a lot of years.
Yeah, it's been a whole lot of years, but you have a very interesting story, and I want to share it with my listeners. Right. So let's start at the beginning. So tell me a little bit about Mr. John Burns. What are you doing currently?
Currently, I'm an executive in an alarm company. I've been doing this since I got out of the Marine Corps. So I've been doing this since 1996. So I'm an old man in my industry now. So that's what I've been doing. I started as a technician right out of the Marine Corps. Wasn't sure what to do. You know, that struggle when you get out. I'm going to use my GI Bill, and I used that for about a month and figured I need to make some money. So became a technician and just stuck to the grind, and I am where I am today within the industry. So that's kind of where I started out of the Marine Corps and where I am. It's been one job the whole time.
Okay, so it's very impressive, the heights you've been able to reach since you left the Marine Corps. And we'll get into your transition from the Marine Corps into civilian life a little later. But right now, I kind of want to, now that I know the listeners know where you are, let's go back. Let's go all the way to the beginning. Tell me a little bit about something about young Mr. John Burns. Like, where did you come from? What was your family structure like? Things like that.
Mr. John Byrne came from Syracuse, New York, upstate New York, South Side, representing pretty hard. So that's where I grew up. I got 5 older sisters, Irish redheads, all Catholics, upstate New York, if you can picture that. So a mom and dad, and it was a pretty structured family until I was probably born. Then it kind of went a little sideways with, at that time, I was born in 73. So at that time, there's a lot going on, a lot of free love. So my sisters, had a lot of, early pregnancy wasn't a surprise. I was an uncle in kindergarten. So, yeah. So, I mean, but growing up with 5 sisters, I think by the time I was in 3rd grade, all but one have already moved out.
Oh,
so,
wow.
Yeah. So they all moved out about 15 and 16.
Oh, wow. So what was the age gap between, first of all, having 5 sisters is crazy, right? I grew up, myself, I grew up in a house full of women as well. My aunt, my grandma, my mom, only males in the house for myself and my grandfather. But my grandfather was like super old school, so he didn't really talk a lot. He spoke when he felt like he needed to. Other than that, he was just doing his own thing. So I 100% could relate to being raised in a house full of women. But 5 sisters, that had to be crazy.
It was different, man. I'll tell you, Gunny, I was dressed up quite a bit. I mean, I went to school in Halloween as a girl named Tina Woods. So, I mean, it was way back then. It was just kind of what we did. The dad wasn't really present. He's got to try to work and make the money. So we just kind of stuck together. We ran hard. Me and my youngest sister that kind of grew up together.
Right.
And just try to get through the struggles of the moving. And a lot of us get it, right? A lot of us have that story, but it was basically chasing the rent. We'd live in a house until you got the eviction notice. Then, 3 in the morning, you just pack up and go, and that's where you go. And I can remember, this may be way off topic, right? But I can remember as we're packing, we'd always say, don't bring the roaches. So you don't want to pack the roaches in the box when you're moving. And that was the real grind growing up. And at the time, we didn't think anything bad of it because your surroundings were all the same. So it's not like I was around people that had anything more than us. We were just, that was our environment. And, when you see people packing at 3 in the morning, nobody thought anything of it. They know what was going on.
No, it's crazy what a kid could get used to. What we feel is normal as we grow up. Because I can remember we didn't have anything either, right? I'm not saying we was dirt poor, but we had, my grandfather made sure he provided what I needed, not what I wanted.
Yeah.
And it's funny how you can normalize that as a kid, right? How you can see things and you're like, wow, everybody isn't doing this. Oh, because everybody in your neighborhood is around it. But once you get out of your comfort zone, like out of your neighborhood, out of your familiar surroundings, it's funny how you like, wow, there's a whole nother world outside of this.
That's well said. It's like putting on glasses, when you finally put on glasses for the first time. And for me, we didn't grow up really with a lot of electronics or TVs, but I didn't like watching TV because I'd watch that TV and I'd get a little bit jealous, like a Silver Spoons or a Facts of Life. You're like, man, that's a kitchen. Like, I didn't know kitchens were that big until you start seeing it on TV. You're like, and it's really humbling when you kind of get into that. You find friends that live on the other side of town and you're kind of uncomfortable going over there. It's like little things like you got to pack some clothes for the next morning, but I got dirty clothes. Like, how do I pack?
Yeah.
Stinky socks. It's the stuff you don't think about, and your kid should never think about it. And I'm sure your kids didn't have to, and my kids don't have to.
Exactly.
Compensate.
And it's crazy because you could even picture the way your kids live now compared to the way we grew up, or the way you grew up in this instance, right? Like you look at what your kids have and how they take it for granted. And you think about how you came up and you can't even understand how do we even get here, right?
Yeah. Man, to this day, I'll sit and listen, I can't afford not to work. I got to work and they depend on me, but I'll sit in my backyard, in my little humble backyard, and still like wish my dad could be back here to see not what I have, just like what I've accomplished. You know what I mean? Like, I got here, like I crossed the finish line.
Exactly.
Like, I've done really all I can do. I've accomplished a lot more than I thought I would, but it's just the journey's fun, man. It's just a fun journey to find out where it's going to end.
Yeah, and to me, the most fun of the journey is being able to look back and see where you came from, because I look around sometimes and I'm almost in awe of what I was able to accomplish with nothing. It's incredible to think about it. So we've covered, I was going to ask you kind of later into my question, what was some of your early struggles, right? So you said kind of evictions, move from place to place, and we also share that in common. Luckily, my mom lived in a house that my grandfather owned, right? So she paid no rent. So we basically had a place to live, but my mom was chasing something, right? No disrespect to her. She did the best she could, but she was chasing something. So she think it'd be a better opportunity and she'll pick up and move me somewhere else. And then that wouldn't work and we'll come back. So I'd just be getting used to a new environment, and boom, we're right back where we started from. So
yeah,
it was like this constant state of what's going to happen next, but we, as kids, we adapt. We don't know any better. For me, until I joined the Marine Corps to really started kind of getting a sense of structure and understanding my way in the world. What kind of pointed you? Well, let's go back a little bit. What made you decide to join the Marine Corps? What went into that decision?
I was a decent athlete. I was a really good athlete in high school, but again, I mean, in football, I started both ways in special teams, but it's because nobody tried out. You know what I mean? So like, I couldn't make a Texas football team, but I was blessed to be where I was because the sports got me centered. My coaches were my dads, right? I didn't miss preseasons because I needed to be there, and I knew that because my surroundings were so bad. So I was blessed with just really good high school coaches, and that's what kind of changed my course. And they worked with me. I got a full ride scholarship to Alfred State University for college. I wanted to go to broadcasting. And when I got there, the stipulation was I couldn't work. I can't show income. My parents had no money. So I went for the summer orientation, drove home, joined the Marine Corps. And I said, you got a week to get me out of here. I said, I go in a week or I go to the Navy. Like, you got to go. And I just knew I had to go. And I didn't tell anybody until they picked me up. My mom was freaking out because I was meant to be the provider.
Right.
Like in high school, like when you worked in high school, quick story. My son works. He's 19, just graduated. He works, makes really good money, and his money goes in the bank. Like, what they don't get is when I worked, my money went right into the house. It's paying the bills, covering the electric bill, because we went through all of our kids' socials, or my parents went through our socials. When the lights get shut off, you go back down there, then you put in the other kid's name and use their social. And you're just playing, you're chasing checks, you're floating checks just with people's socials. And it's just a game that was played then.
Yeah, but that's a game that was played in a lot of communities, right? And it's funny. I'm gonna tell you the big eye-opening thing for me when I joined the Marine Corps was, when you're where you're from, everybody around you is doing the same thing. Everybody around you has the same lingo. Everybody around you thinks the same. But then when you get in the Marine Corps around this big melting pot of other people, like, you start hearing other people's stories and you like, man, I'm not the only one that was going through this. But it's hard for you to even fathom
Yeah.
if somebody else has actually gone through what you've gone through. So tell me about that early adjustment. You said you came from a family, 5 sisters.
My adjustment was really one, watching my sisters grow and get pregnant.
Right,
And for me, being a guy with all these girls around, seeing seeing a naked girl wasn't a big deal to me because I had all these sisters.
right.
So
That had to
I
be
was
crazy.
not interested in girls. It's like
Right.
they taught me, like, I knew if I was in my head, if I had a girlfriend, I'm going to be a dad and I'm going to be stuck here at a very early age. I just knew I wanted to get out and I needed to get out. And I didn't date anybody at all for like ever. So people
Mhm.
thought I was like wanting to date men. Like, I let them make their own conclusions, but I knew my end goal. I knew my end game. My end game
Right.
was, I got to get out of Syracuse, New York, and I got to make something myself. And the coaches guided me. Not getting into college, I thought, was a sign. And so I just said, I'm going to join the Marine Corps and just see what's up. And I assumed I was going to be in for life. Like, I was
Right.
a lifer going in. And that was really what it was in. And then getting into the Marine Corps, and just like you, I mean, I was never on a plane in my life until I went to South Carolina. I didn't know what to expect. I've never been away from home. So just meeting people in boot camp. And I just realized real quickly that, again, we're all the same. We're scared young kids. We're trying to make something. And everyone I talked to had a struggle like you. And mental health wasn't talked about then.
Not at all.
We didn't show emotions. We dealt with it and we move on. And our dads did the same thing, and their dads. So we just keep it buried in. And I just went into the Marine Corps with an attitude, and I just wanted to, my end goal was to get out of the Marine Corps as an E9. That's what I
Right.
went in with, the mindset.
And that's funny, right? Because Marine Corps saved my life. I say that every opportunity I get. I scream it from the rooftop every time I talk about the Marine Corps. You'll never hear me say anything bad about the Marine Corps itself, because I know, for one, the Marine Corps saved my life. Some of the people in the Marine Corps, I may not have really vibe with, or some of my experiences in the Marine Corps probably weren't great, but the Marine Corps as an organization saved my life. But it definitely was an adjustment. It definitely opened my eyes to a lot of things. And for me, the biggest thing I got out of the Marine Corps early on was just structure. What were some of the early things that you got out of it?
The Marine Corps, I think I had pretty good self structure. For me, it was the leadership. Like,
Right.
my dad was always around. My dad, he was a big alcoholic, a
Mhm.
great friend, a best friend, but he liked to drink and didn't really provide a lot. So it's having that structure. And I learned it from the coaches in high school. Like, I needed structure. I needed someone, like, I understood it, but I needed someone to tell me what to do. And my goal was to exceed their expectations. And that's a downfall of mine. I always want to exceed someone's expectations. If they ask me for something that I should have thought of, it kills me.
Right.
Like, why didn't I think of that? I should have been proactive enough to do that. So I was always trying to be a step ahead of what they expected of me.
Right.
And I thrived on that in the Marine Corps.
Exactly. And it's funny because it's funny how our journey is the same but different at the same time, because you joined the Marine Corps for a different reason than I did. You came in, you had structure, like you had a male figure in your life. It might have been the strongest, but it was someone there.
Yes. Yeah, agreed. Yep.
For me, I just had to figure it out. And I don't know what's worse, right? I don't know if it's worse not having anyone or having someone that really isn't measuring up to what you need.
I
What
would say, like, in my case, my dad was non-abusive. He was a great human being, just
Mhm.
drank a lot. So I
Right,
was fortunate, because I can't imagine not having a male figure
right,
like my dad in my life.
right.
Like, I can imagine my kids not knowing who we are and having some direction. So
Exactly.
I can't imagine that situation. To figure it out on your own,
Mhm.
that's
And it's
tough.
crazy because when I did get a chance to spend some time with my dad, he was also alcoholic, drank very, very heavily. Matter of fact, growing up, all I heard was bad stories about my dad and how he drank so much, and how he was nobody. But as a kid, you don't care about any of that. You just want your dad around.
Yep.
But when I actually got time to spend a summer with him, it was a disaster. It was everything that it shouldn't
Mhm.
have been, right? But I needed that experience. I needed that experience. I needed to see that, and I needed to see it for myself. And I've talked a couple of times on the podcast about, let's say, how women try to keep dads away from their kids because they don't think it's a good example. But you can't hide it from your kid. You have
No.
to let them see it for themselves. Now, you never want to be in an abusive relationship, an abusive situation, or put your child in harm's way. But don't hide it from your kid. Let them make their own decision on what this parent is. Right? Don't try to force them to believe something about a parent. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's great words, and I'll follow it up with having a conversation with my son Braden. We were talking about the things he remembers when he was 6 and 7.
Right.
And he was telling me a story the other day, and I didn't know where it was going to end. He goes, "Do you remember during Thanksgiving when I reached over and I spilled the milk all over the turkey?" And in my head, I'm like, "I don't remember that." And in my head, I'm like, "What did I do?" He goes, "Remember you got up from the table and you were like, 'Why are you crying over spilled milk, man? Just pick it up. We're good.'" Like, if I would have not said that and smacked him or whatever I would have done, who knows? Like, he remembers that vividly. And I think as parents, we forget, even though there's these little young humans, they're remembering it, and they're going to grow up and they're going to look at us and they're going to judge us and how we were
Yeah.
parents. And I, because of my parents, made sure that I was always present. I mean, I traveled 3 days a week for years, but I coached both my boys in select baseball. I never missed a game. I coached them because I could control the practices, so I can practice around my schedule. So I had to be overly involved because my parents weren't. But again, we
Right.
overcompensate.
Exactly.
And to this, so like this the reason why my kids aren't really good at cooking and cleaning, because I'm really good at it. and I've always done it. So I've really hindered them in that aspect.
Yeah.
My parents gave me so many tools of life skills, life lessons. They didn't mean to, but I'm a great smart man because of they were incapable of helping.
Yeah, you turned a negative into a positive. Even though you may have had to do things that you may not have wanted to at that age, it helped you. It helped you.
Yeah.
It shaped you into the man that you were. And I am the exact same way. Like, I parented for a long time out of guilt. All I knew was I wanted to give my kids everything that I never got. So I was parenting. All the thing I know about being a parent was give them what I didn't get, right? And then help them stay away
Yeah.
from the situations that I found myself in, right? And I think it's a great segue, right? So, because I wanted to ask one of my questions I wanted to ask you was, what was it like? Because I know you were married early in the Marine Corps. What was that like? What was that early? Hey, I'm in love. I'm married. I'm in the Marine Corps. Tell me about that. How would that balance?
Man, it's just, if you could go back in time, right? And I'll chalk it up to this 100%. Now at 51,
Mhm.
not dating anybody in high school, I was terrified of what was going to happen and get trapped. Then you move to another state and you meet somebody and people that you've never seen before. I grew up in Syracuse. It was white, African American, and Puerto Rican, and some Vietnamese. That's kind of what it was. Like, I never saw anybody that was from Mexico or Mexican until I went into the Marine Corps. And so you meet these different people, and I kind of fell in love with that, not the person. I fell in love with the excitement and the newness. And I'm an adult. I got some money. I'm a Marine, and before you know it, you're settling down, and you're it's a do-over. If you could do a do-over, man, that's a big do-over. And I talk to my boys very openly about that, of what I've gone through and what you can't, once you got the baby, you have a baby, right? There's no do-overs in that. So
Exactly.
I was fortunate. I did not have a child early on. So I mean, I had my first child at 30. So at least I've kind of followed through on wanting to wait and make sure that I was mature and a little more settled.
Right. Yeah, I got married very early. I joined the Marine Corps late. I didn't join the Marine Corps until I was 23. So I was married at 26 and had my first kid shortly thereafter. And my ex-wife, she already had a daughter. So, man, I was 26, 2 kids, didn't have a clue on what it was to really be a man, or even what that responsibility was, man. So it was a hard time for me. That was my first attempt at monogamy, right? I say that all the time. Like, my first attempt at monogamy was my marriage, and I failed horribly. I just had no clue.
Well, let me ask you a question. It's your podcast, but like, what was that? What was your point to when you said, I have to go to the Marine Corps, or I'm gonna die? Like, at what point were you at that point?
Right. So I was asked to leave high school my sophomore year. So sophomore is as far as I went in high school, and I tried very hard to get in the street, right? Very hard. But I could never really stay in the street. I just wasn't built for it. I'm gonna be honest. Like, I thought I was a tough guy. but I just wasn't ready for that. And then it seemed like it was always something that held me back from getting as deep as I wanted to get.
Yeah.
And it came a time in Miami where things were getting really, really bad. And one day I woke up and I was like, if I don't get out of here, I'm gonna die or I'm being in prison, you know? So I went to a recruiter, and this is a funny story. I went to a recruiter and I was trying to, I was asking him about the Marine Corps, and he asked me, hey, what, do you have your high school diploma? This, that, and the third. I was like, well, no, I didn't graduate from high school. And he just shut me down. He was like, well, listen, there's too much you have to do to join. I know you're not going to do it, so let's not waste each other's time. And he basically escorted me out of the office. And you know me a little bit. I'm like, what? What'd he say? So at that point, I took it on as a challenge. So I walked back in his office and I was like, well, hey, what do I have to do? He was like, well, you got to get a GED. You got to get college credits. You have to, and I had like a couple of legal things going on at the time. And he said, we got to get that cleared up. So yeah, I mean, if you get all that done, then maybe we can have a conversation. So it just started from there. I enrolled myself in a GED program, got my GED, went to college for a semester or two, got a couple of college credits. He had to help me with some legal issues that I had at the time. I had to get 2 CG waivers to join the Marine Corps. This is back in '91, so yeah, it was crazy. And I joined the Marine Corps at 23.
And now you have a full-on degree, man. I mean, what? It's just crazy in life. Now, as we're older, you look back, like that one decision, like for you to get your GED and do all that stuff, that's a lot of work. And most of us are like, yeah, just forget it. I'll do it next week, and next week turns into next year. But that one decision, man, and you ever think, and I think about it, not often, but like, man, if I would have just stayed in Syracuse, where would I be? What would I be doing? And I think I'd be working at the trash factory or working and doing the laboring job.
It's funny because I talk about that all the time. Me and my fiance talk about it all the time. Like where would I be if I'd have made one different decision? And like you wanted to be a lifer in the Marine Corps. My goal when I first came in was to do 4 years and go back to Miami and figure it out, right? And I wound up retiring from the Marine Corps, and you wound up getting out after 4 years. Yeah. So it's funny how you think how you have a plan for your life and it completely goes a different way. Life is gonna push you the way you need to go.
Yeah, and for me, it was 4 years, and 4 years is fast. So from when I joined to the time I got out, I was like, yeah, my whole life I changed everything I wanted to do.
Right.
But I've never been afraid, though. I've never been afraid to jump.
Right.
Like where I am in my position today. I mean, I've lived in California. I moved to New Hampshire, worked out of Boston. Then I moved back to Texas, just moved to Oklahoma. Like, you got to pay your dues to get it done too. But I've never been afraid to just make that leap. I just really feel that there's a safety net. Like, life has given me a safety net for some reason. I'm not saying it's kind of a weird statement to say, but I've never failed when I've jumped. If I go, I'm all in. So, I mean, if you're going to go, just go hard or just don't go.
And I don't think so much that life has given you a safety net. You have just gotten comfortable being uncomfortable. And that's what successful people do, right? Successful people get comfortable in the uncomfortability of it all, right? And I think that's the biggest problem, right? If you want to call it that, to today's society, right? Everybody wants everything. Everybody wants to be comfortable. There's no growth in comfortable.
No. I've always talked about you have to get uncomfortable to get comfortable, but I've never heard it said the way you said it. So that was really well said. But it's true. Like, I just tell my son, because he needs to get some stuff done. I'm like, if you're going to allow others to hold you back, that's on you.
Exactly.
You can go get whatever you want to get. Like, if you're waiting on them to deliver the part, just go get the part.
Yeah.
It's just it's so easy to rely on the excuse,
Let's talk about your transition out of the Marine Corps. How was that for you? Because you came in with the intentions on, hey, this is my career, but then all of a sudden you decided, no, I want to go another way. How was that?
Man, when I got out of the Marine Corps, I didn't want to get out. I just knew it wasn't for me. I just knew I just wasn't going that direction. I didn't know what to do. I met a girl in California named Leanne. We dated. Then I just got out and I went back to Syracuse. And the plan was, I'm just going to go back to Syracuse. I looked for some jobs, and I was going to go work at there's a big sausage factory there that's pretty popular, and I'm going to go work there. I'm just going to work at the sausage plant like we do and just work my 9 to 5 and make me some money. And that was literally my transition. And within 2 weeks, Leanne called me up and said, I'm going to come to Syracuse and stay with you for 2 weeks. And if you don't come back with me, I won't bother you again. And it happened fast. She came back. I got a one-way ticket, went back to California, and she had a good job, able to support me for a little bit. And I got a job making $5.15 an hour. And after that, it happened that fast. This is all within like 5 months. I met a guy at a bar, and he offered me a job to work for home security, to install home security systems.
Right.
And he said, but he goes, and it's going to pay you $10 an hour with a company truck. I'm like, dude,
I'm in.
I said, lottery.
I'm in. I made it.
The lottery. Right? Yeah.
And I'm go ahead. I'm sorry.
That was it. And like from that point on, I moved in with Leanne. We've been married, man, I don't know. We've been married a long time. We've been together 30 years.
Wow.
Which is hard to believe. And that's my story. And I just got with her, and she's structured, and my goal was to have a stay-at-home mom and raise our kids like I saw people doing in California in these big homes that I was installing security systems for. And, took about 10 years, but, stay-at-home mom, raised our kids, and I'm talking to you on a podcast.
That's amazing. And it's, how crazy is it to say I made $5 an hour or I made $10 an hour? How crazy is it to say that now?
I know, man.
I mean, you're old, brother. You're old.
I know. And I was so proud. My first car I bought was a Dodge Neon. Right. I don't know if they make them anymore. It only had one side mirror. And I was so proud of myself. Such a horrible car. But I mean, I was proud of those little things. Like I bought a car off the showroom floor.
Right.
And like my family's never done that. And I bought my first house at 22. Yeah. And that's the Marine Corps. That's my VA loan. That's what I work for as well. So, and it's been a really good story for me. Like I don't dwell on the past, Gunny. Right. That's my thing. The past it's for me, it's all this positivity of like, I've grown from it.
Right.
And there's a lot, we all have negativity, but unfortunately some people can't let go of it. And it's
exactly.
It just consume you.
I heard something one time that made a lot of sense. It kind of brought everything to perspective for me. Somebody said it's like driving. They kind of compared it to driving a car, right? If you're trying to get somewhere, how fast are you gonna get there looking in the rearview mirror? Right? And that's how life is, right? You can't worry about what happened before. You have to focus on, yes, you learn from the experiences of the past, but you can't stay there. You have to continue to move forward. And I think that's one of the things that you've done. And one of the things that a lot of people need to do. I had to learn how to do it. Stop looking in the past. Yeah. Yes, you use it as a reference point, like what you don't want to do again, but you can't live your life looking back. You'll never get to your destination.
No, and it's you just hope that's something you pass on to your kids, and it's easier said than done, right? It took me some time to get there too and understand that, and I'm a forgiver. Like when I forgive, and it's over and I move on. I don't dwell on a whole lot of stuff because it's just, I don't know. I think the older we get too, we see people around us that we love, that pass and move on. And it's like, man, I just don't want the baggage. I just want a clean slate, and I'm pretty transparent and upfront with people.
Right. And I like what you said. You talked about teaching your kids something. Explain to me how the way you grew up influenced the way you raised your kids. Like what lessons did you learn from the way you grew up that you knew you had to change in your kids?
For me, it was what's around them. If I have a drink, like my kids have never, like now I have a drink with my 21-year-old, right? I'm not a big drinker, but my kids growing up have never seen alcohol in the house just because I grew up around it, like the smell of it. So they didn't grow up around alcohol and cigarettes. And I was always involved because I know what it's like growing up, not having your parent, like my parents have never gone to a parent teacher conference. Like they've never gone to one of my events, that kind of stuff. So I just overdid it with my kids, and it's just, I'm very transparent with them. I want them to know the good and the bad. My parents didn't talk to me about what happens with teenage pregnancy, what happens if you do this. And I talked to my boys about pregnancy and sex and what it means. And I'm very transparent with them. And I have a very open relationship with them.
And it's great. Your experiences around 5 women, not including your mom, right? And seeing that side of it. And I'm sure that helped when you started having sons. kind of explaining the female perspective on stuff, or through your experiences, you kind of guide them because you've seen that other side, right?
Yeah, no, and that's well said. I've never thought about that either. Like when they have their girlfriends, I mean, they are very courteous and polite, and like they understand how to, not as well as I do, but it's like the cooking. And yes, dude, I'm a romantic, and I think it's because of the five sisters.
Right.
And my boys are kind of the same way, and that's all through our music too. We're very eclectic with music, and
Right.
they like Braden. I mean, he's very, very into, like, I just showed him the movie The Five Heartbeats because I remember watching that for the first time on the Germantown. I don't know if you remember seeing that movie.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I remember.
But he's very into deep R&B soul, and my other son's really into like the punk grunge stuff, but they listen to different music. So I think music really alters the way you grow up as well.
It does.
I grew up in a house of very depressing country music.
Right.
It's always on the radio, and it's like it brings you down.
Just being exposed to another environment kind of changes the way you think. Because I'm gonna tell you, I'm gonna be 100% honest. Until I joined the Marine Corps, I might have seen 15 white people in my life, and I want to say 8 of those were police officers, right?
Yeah.
And the rest of them were, I saw a couple of white kids in school and people around the neighborhood fixing stuff, right? So it was different. It was different, like getting to know you or being around you guys and seeing how you guys weren't that different from me, and how we shared a lot of the same struggles and had the same stories. So at the root of it, people aren't that different.
Yeah.
As much as they try to make it that way, it really isn't. It really isn't.
I think so many of us, at least as men, I'll speak for myself, like we carry these insecurities. We don't know where to put them, and we mask it. Right. Like what's crazy though, Gunny, is you and I didn't know each other for a long time.
No.
And it's just, there was an amazing impact there, but like you were always just a version of me. Like you're just that version of me. And it's like, I was intimidated by you. And like, I had to, we've had our stories, and it was, it's crazy how it's just, like you said it to me, the first time I really heard it and it really meant something was that, the steel sharpens steels, iron sharpens iron. And
yeah,
you made an impact on me. And I remember when I first saw you at Chili's,
right,
on that reunion, I didn't know how I was going to feel, man. And when I saw you, I was like, I was just elated. I was like really excited to see you.
It was funny because you were like my first nemesis in the Marine Corps. And I mean that, like,
agreed.
I had this air about myself, and it was funny running into you and just seeing the same thing and not knowing how to. And you were a white guy, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I really didn't know how to handle it.
And I grew up around all black guys. Like my high school was 90% black, so I was comfortable around you.
And it was just funny. I did it. I treated you like I treated everyone I thought was a threat. Like I kind of, I don't know. I just didn't know how to act around, but I understood, like, okay, I have to show him, that I know what I'm doing, And it's funny how years later when we come together, like, and we actually sat down and had a conversation, man, it wasn't, because me and you it was never got to a point of disrespect or anything like that. It was just always like this rivalry between you and I, but it was respect.
But think about that, and I've thought about that before. Like you and I never like came to blows. We never ever. It was respecting. No, we never. Yeah, to your point, we didn't disrespect each other. We were just kind of assholes to each other.
Yeah, for sure.
but not in a really mean way.
But I think that rivalry made us both better at what we did, and it made us the people we are today, right? I spent a very short time around you, but just that impact that you had on me. I mentioned you in my retirement speech, and I hadn't seen you in forever, but I always remember how I wanted to be better. And I don't know if that even makes sense, but I just wanted to be better. I had to prove to you that I was better. And I think you had to prove to me that you were better.
And that's all you want. You want two people that want to just do better than each other. And before you know, you just have two just grinders, man. But dude, I have that on my phone. I look at that at least 3-4 times a month. I mean, I just save the clip as an app on my phone. Your retirement speech that you sent me. I mean, that hit me hard, man. You have no idea. Dude, I talked to my other guys that we know. I'm like, dude, I was in his retirement speech. Like, I got proof. I'm like, I'll show.
Right. Hey, but before we get out of here, because I don't want to take up too much of your time, but you said something early on about the way you grew up, right? You know, you had those male figures that kind of stepped in to your life and kind of guided you. Talk about how important that is to have those male role models, whether it's your dad, whether it's somebody else. Talk about how important that is.
So I can only tell you, man, that's a great question, Gunny. I mean, it really is, because without it, I don't know where I'd be. Like, I wanted to impress them so bad, to come home to my dad, to tell him, and hoping he get a little like jealous. Like, man, who's this Coach Spicer guy? But that never reacted to it. But without him, I guarantee you 100%, like the Marine Corps saved you, I'd be in drugs. I mean, drugs were prevalent, obviously. I mean, it wasn't like it was today, but I mean, everybody's smoking weed. You know, I didn't touch drugs because I had sports. You know, I didn't want to disappoint my coaches. So that was the biggest thing for me. It's just, if I don't have a male role model in my life, I'm depending on who? And you probably know that better than anybody. Because I can't even relate to that, because I always fell, again, that safety net of life that was given to me, I always fell into these right hands of people. Dude, I was third grade. I can remember vividly, third grade, I was just walking, and I ran into Brother Mike. This crazy story, but he's a brother, which is a part of the Catholic Church. I'm not a Catholic anymore, but he took me to the church. He took me to a Bible study.
Wow.
Like, how, and nothing happened. And for the next 3 or 4 years, I was a part of this little congregation. So I'm third grade, third, fourth, fifth grade, part of this congregation. They provide food for my family on Thanksgiving. They bring food on Christmas. I, to this day, have never told my sisters or anybody that was me.
Right.
But they just showed up with food. And I would work at the church, you know, but like no one knew. And it's like, to me, that's more of a godly spirit than me just tripping over things. But I've always been directed to do the right things. And the temptation is really there a lot when you're growing up in no supervision.
Exactly.
I had no curfew. No one inspected my homework. No one cared if I went to school. You know, I graduated on time. I just did my own thing and stayed focused. And I don't know where the focus came from, man. Like, I don't. I wish I could say, hey, thank you or thank you. But I think that's where the village just kind of came together, man.
And that's why I like talk. That's why I wanted to talk to you about your story. I wanted people to hear your story, because you are a perfect example of like life pushing you the way you need to go, right?
Yeah.
And we all have that. We all have choices, right? And I'm sure there's plenty of time that you could have made different choices, but you had like this little voice in your head, or something guiding you towards something better, right? And I believe we all have that. You have that. I have that. Because listen, I shouldn't be sitting here talking to you right now, where I come from and in my past and things that I've done, right? But I think we're here for something higher than us, right? You know, I'm getting into faith now, right? I've never really been a really big I mean, I always believed in God, right? Something higher than me, but you know, I'm working on really tapping into that, you know, because I have a lot to be thankful for. Like I said, the reason I'm sitting here is because, you know, a lot of things that didn't happen to me in the past, just like you know. So I think it's important to get our stories out there, and just for other people to hear it and be inspired by it, or not.
And that's all I can hope for, man. Because I can tell you, like, I've just never been afraid of what life was going to give me. Like, I embraced it. Like, at a young age or whatever, it's just I knew that I don't have to be stuck.
Exactly.
And it just, something resonated with me, and I enjoyed the journey, and the journey's fun, but we forget about all those hard times. And I'm fortunate that I've blocked a lot of that out. I mean, I can, if I want to go I can really sit down and think deep, but why? Like, why do I want to resonate that garbage? And you just kind of flush it and move on. But
it's not serving you anything.
No. And it's I'm not getting into the faith thing either. And we can do that one day. But I mean, I love the Bible. I mean, I'm a Christian, and I know it's bigger than me. Like, it is, because I've had many things answered. I mean, my wife and I were in a horrible car wreck. I shouldn't be walking. I should be crippled. And so there's good things in life, and you just got to embrace it. So when it's bad, that's just a taste. There's so much more good than bad, at least in my experience.
Nah, mine too. So here go a question for you. So, you know, we both have children. Talk about the differences between this generation and the generation that we grew up in. What's the biggest difference that you see?
For me, the biggest difference is just the expectations, man. Like they expect to apply for a job and get it. Like they expect things to be in there. They expect, and it's probably like you, the upbringing, right? And I'm sure if I grew up in the house that my kids did, maybe that was the same thing. But there was no expectation in my house. Like you'd expect nothing, and what you get, you're grateful for.
Exactly.
You know, to serve something and even complain about it. So to me, it's just expectations. And in the position I'm in, we do a lot of hiring. It's the same thing. People just expect you to give them everything and have to work for it. So,
right.
What do you think? What do you see?
Entitlement, just like you said, they're very entitled. You know, they feel like we owe them something. When we grew up, like you said, we didn't. We got what we got. Whatever we got, we were thankful for because we might not have gotten that. You know, we didn't make we couldn't make a lot of demands. You know, we got what we got. If we didn't get it, then we did that to suck it up and figure out a way to do it.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the reality of it. But I'm gonna tell you, you're probably not gonna agree with me on this, but I believe we have our generation is a big reason for that. And I'm gonna tell you, and I'm gonna explain to you why I say that. Because our parents didn't give us what we wanted. Well, I can speak for me. I gave my kids what they wanted, not what they needed. Right. So instead of making them earn it, I just gave it to them. Why? Because I knew what it felt like not to have it. So I didn't want them to feel that way. So I just gave them stuff. So over time, they grew this sense of entitlement. Oh, well, what do you mean you're not going to get me that? You know, you always do it. No, how about earning it? Well, what do you mean earn it? I never had to earn it before. You know what I mean?
Listen, you said it exactly the best way it could be said. Like I look at my son and say, man, he's acting really freaking spoiled. And like, well, yeah, he is kind of spoiled. Like I'd be buying like the new PlayStation before they're asking.
Exactly.
Because like, look what dad got you. Like, ah! And then it's like, well, then where's the new PS5? Like, why aren't you waiting in line? And
exactly.
You say I can't add anything to what you said. Like you said it perfectly, and we are 100% at fault. And I own it too. I know I am. So now I'm trying to show them things at 18 and 21, and they're like, "Yeah, I ain't interested now."
Yeah. Now we're trying to self-correct, right? Now we gotta hope that they make the adjustment with their kids. You know, so
as grandparents, it'll be my job to whip those little kids into shape because I didn't do it to the kids.
No, listen, I just had my first grandchild. Listen, I'm gonna spoil them horribly, give them all kind of habits they have to break, and then let them deal with that, right?
I'm 100% with you, man. 100%.
But hey, I got one last question for you. This is what question that I'm asking all my guests from now on, right? So you got to put your thinking cap on for this one. Ready? All right. So my question is this:
all right,
if you can go back and give your younger self some advice, A, what advice would that be? And B, what age would you go back to?
I don't want to get sad. Well, this is what I would do. It would kind of help me out. I would go back to my younger self, maybe 6, so I could understand it, and tell myself, like, all this stuff you're about to experience in life is really okay. Like, I promise you, don't change your course, but it's gonna be okay. You're gonna turn out okay. And that would just alleviate all that stress as a kid and the crying and worrying about life, to say, okay, you're gonna make it through this. Just to have a little bit of less stress in life would have been really nice.
And what age would you have gone back to?
Probably 6 or 7 years old, you know, because I knew enough at 6 or 7. I mean, I was already an uncle babysitting, you know, right. I was already babysitting kids at 7 years old. So I just want to know that it'd be okay. You know, that would have helped me through a lot more.
No, that's great. Now,
because to this day, I still carry the, not in a bad way. You still have like anxiety. I want to make sure things are right and done and clean. And I'm a little OCD with that, you know, so.
PTSD, man. PTSD is more than people just shooting at you. I came in the Marine Corps with PTSD. It just got worse over time, right? I'm gonna tell you, I'm a big advocate of counseling. Counseling has helped to change my life. So yeah, I definitely, and I'll give you mine, even though I'm gonna have to come up with a different one every episode, because I'm gonna ask this question to all my guests. But I think if I had to think about it right now, I think I would go back to age 15, and I would. And this is right after I came back from visiting my dad for the summer. I tried to live with my dad. It didn't work out. His girlfriend didn't want me to stay there. And I took that as like super rejection, right?
Dude, yeah.
And that instance changed the course of my life, really. But I would go back to the time right when I got home, and I would tell myself, he loves you. It's not about you.
See, and 15. That's a strong age at 15. There's a lot going on at 15.
Actually, it was I'm sorry, it was 14. I'll go back to 14. Yeah. Yeah. At 14, I spun out. Like I came back and I did, I was asked to leave school as a sophomore. So that kind of started that course. That started me trying to be what everybody else in the neighborhood looked up to, right? That started that, because I didn't have anybody telling me to teach me how to be a man, right?
Yeah.
To explain where these emotions come from, to explain how to handle conflict, to explain, to protect me, right? To show me what a man is supposed to do in certain situations. So I just did what everybody else around me was doing. And I'm gonna tell you, I spent half my life unlearning a lot of stuff that I learned growing up. And I'm 56. I'm just now getting to the point, and it's sad to say, right? But I'm just now getting to a point where I understand, I really truly understand what it's like to be, what it is to be a man and stand on your principles and flush out all the BS that I grew up. And listen, I was married for 22 years before I got divorced, and raised kids. So I did all this without even really understanding how to do it or who I was or what my role was. I just kind of figured it out, right? Day to day.
But for you to figure out enough to even understand to unpack it, I mean, that's the biggest part of it,
Exactly.
is to unpack it and recognizing it. But it makes you who you are. And a lot of people, unfortunately, in your situation, had the same background as you. They chose the easy route. And I'm sure people that you grew up with that are no longer here, that have been shot and killed, and they're just street life.
And I hate when, and I'm kind of getting out the beaten path, but this kind of just came to my head. Like, I hate when people ask, like, what they compare. They say, well, hey, you made it out. Why can't everybody make it out? Hey, man, listen, I am the exception to the rule.
Yeah.
Right. I don't know how I made it, but I shouldn't have made it. I'm here just by the grace of God, right? And just like you, a few people that took an interest in me and kind of guided me in the right direction at the right time. Because listen, man, I could have went a whole nother way, right? But I didn't. I'm here. I'm talking to you. I've surpassed all expectations of me, just as you have, right?
Yeah.
I've surpassed every expectation anybody's ever placed on me, and I'm not done, right? And neither are you.
No. But it feels good knowing that like I've done my part for my family. Like I've done well for them.
Yep.
Man, Gunny, it's been a ride. It's been a ride. It's unfortunate that so many people just can't make the same decisions. But we're just built differently. We're not all meant to be successful either.
No.
And I have no college degree. I mean, my transcripts in high school are not good.
Right.
I carried a low C average all through high school, and I had coaches that were my teachers that got me through high school.
Yeah.
Other than that, because again, like you, I went to high school. After high school, I had practice because I did 3 sports, and from there I went right to the grocery store to work. I closed at midnight. Then you go home, and that's a long walk because we don't have cars, right? And then
circumstances,
yeah, that's what you do. But again, but you feel good about it because you're earning a paycheck. Imagine kids today having to do that. Like, I got to take a city bus where and transfer what? Like,
and I'm gonna tell you, I'm gonna disparage this myth, right? Because there are a lot of kids that do that. There are a lot of kids but we don't hear about those kids because it's easier to talk about the kids that aren't doing the right thing, or it's easier to paint a picture of that generation not doing anything. Just like, I criticize them a lot, but I got to give them a lot of credit too, right? Because they're way smarter than we are, right? They're way more informed. They may not do a lot with that knowledge, but they have it, right? And a lot of them just don't know what to do with it. They have no guidance, and because a lot of people say, well, this generation is lost, they don't even attempt to reach out, right? And that's one of the reasons I did this podcast, right? And I talk to people like you because they need to understand it. I'm hoping somebody hears this and understands, like, hey, my situation, if they could do it, I can do it. Because I tell my son all the time, like, you are the upgrade. Like, if I accomplish this with where I came from, imagine where you can go.
Yeah, no, that's well said. I can't even argue with that.
Yeah. But hey, man, like, I'm glad you agreed to do this, man. I love you, bro.
Man, I love you right back. Listen, I want our kids to want it. I want my kids to want it as badly as I want it. That's all I want. No matter what they do, Just want it, go all in. If you're not going to go all in, just don't go. Like
Yeah,
literally. And if you don't love what you do, stop doing it because you're only 20, right? You
exactly.
have time to make some mistakes. But I think these kids today have this pressure, like they're thinking, both my boys thinking they got to figure out what they're going to do today as a career for the rest of their lives. But in turn, they've seen what I have.
Mhm.
But I'm like, yeah, but dude, I was a technician. I just stuck with the same job because
Right.
I had to.
Mhm.
Because now I'm raising families, right? Because I got locked into what I did.
Exactly.
So they don't have kids. They don't have to worry about any of this stuff right now. So
Yeah.
I just want them to want it. And that's what I think they're missing is that want it, because we had to want it because we didn't know what it was. We couldn't pull up our phone and see something. Like we had to go and find it.
Right. And they're not hungry. They don't need to be hungry, right? Like we didn't have a choice to fail because there was nobody there to pick us up. Well, I'm gonna speak for me. There was nobody there to pick me up. Like if I didn't do it, then wasn't nobody gonna do it for me.
Mm-mm.
And like I tell my kids, nobody's gonna knock on the door and ask you, do you want an opportunity? You got to go get it. But they're not hungry. But they'll get to that point. They'll get to that point where they get hungry and they want it, but they got to want it. I can't make you want something more than you do.
Yeah. I can't want it more than you do for you. Yeah. I mean, I get
And
it.
that's the hardest thing to me as a parent is kind of wanting better for them than they want for themselves. Not saying that they don't want things, but they just aren't as hungry about pursuing things as I would be at that age.
And if they're hunting now, it's going to benefit them here in a couple of years, but they're not ready to hunt. And like we've read the book, we know what you should do right now. But I know at my age, I'm like, yeah, whatever.
And this is something else that drives me crazy, right? So your kids look at you the way you are now, right?
Yeah.
They have no clue what 18-year-old Burns was like, or I'm sorry, John, what 18-year-old John was like, right?
Or 18-year-old
they think they're going through is new, right?
Yeah.
No, we've seen this thing a million times. I've been up and down this road that you're just trying to get on. But they look at you, they be like, oh, you're an old guy. You don't know what you're talking about. Okay, well.
I let them know. I do it in chapters. I'm like, guys, I'm in chapter 51 in my life, and you're in chapter 19 and 21. Like, I've been in your chapters. I can help you if you want me to tell you what to expect.
Yep.
And they'll listen, and we'll talk. But they're like, yeah, I'm dad.
You're the old guy.
Yeah, they don't see the craziness,
Exactly.
And again, they call me a little unhinged. I'm a little different, but I like being involved. What I think about sometimes? Because I'm so detached from like how I grew up.
Mm-hmm.
So I wonder, is it any different? Like, when's the last time I went to a neighborhood that I grew up in type? Like, it's probably, is it the same? Like, is the world I'm living in today, like I never knew as a kid. So like my kids only know this middle class lifestyle.
Right.
So I wonder if I go back to my lower class lifestyle, is it still the same? Is it still, are they still taking the buses the same? Are they still living the same life I lived? It's like you want to go there and just like, I don't have a sign like, man, like stay out of trouble, like don't do drugs, like you can make it.
Let me answer the question for you. It's worse. When you were growing up, all you saw was your little box, right? Your area, your neighborhood, right?
My Syracuse news. I didn't have
but these kids have access to everything. And I don't envy parents today.
No.
And I'm gonna tell you why, because and I said this, I'm gonna say this a million times on this podcast. I've said it before. Once your kid, and not in this day and age, once your kid understands anything, you have to tell them everything. Because if you don't tell them, they're gonna get it from somewhere else.
Yeah.
And you rather be the one to tell them things than for them to go out there and experience it or learn it from someone else that you have no idea what their intentions are or what they're even telling them.
It's crazy to think about, right?
Yeah.
It's crazy to think that where we are. Like we're very happy where we are, but just like we are those people now. We're trying to be the wise, let me tell you some knowledge, versus that 19, 23-year-old, like, whatever, man, I got this. It's a different, it's just such a shift, and it happens fast.
And listen, man, sooner or later, we play all the parts, and we are the voice of reason now. And it's hard for me to believe that I am in a room and I am the voice of reason.
But you've earned that though. Like you speak well, you're educated, like you not just educated by books. I mean, you're educated by the streets, and you're educated by the Marine Corps and everybody in between. So I mean, you've been educated by the poverty black, by the poverty white, by the crazy Hispanic, by the crazy, you know what I mean? Like you've had a mix of all of us in there. And
Yeah.
you turn around at your age now and you're trying to spread this knowledge out of positivity. And then that's really, unfortunately, that's what's missed. Because all the media covers, I'm not a big news guy, but the media covers the negativity. And I gotta tell people all the time, the billions of people in this world, like there's not that much negativity or bad news going on. Like there's not that bad. We just really inflate what's there, is the way I see it.
Well, I'm gonna disagree with you. It's not that it's not that bad. It's just that all we focus on is the bad, right? Because it is a lot of bad, but it's also a lot of good. But it's easier to cover the bad. It brings more attention when you cover the bad, right? Because the good is boring.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
I tell you what, go to work tomorrow and tell a good story and then tell a horrible story and see which one gets around faster.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Nobody wants to cover the good stuff because that's not drawing any attention. You know?
So that's the new norm, right?
Exactly.
That's the new norm is, you know, like I got people like in my house that like my wife loves to watch the murder mystery shows and, you know, how to kill a husband and, you know, kill thy neighbor stuff. I don't do well with that. I don't watch it, but it's just, maybe it's just the norm of everything is negative.
No, it is.
I don't know, Gunny. I can't live in a negative world.
No, you can't. You can't you can't get stuck in a place, man.
No,
you can't.
No. I don't know enough. I don't. Like I'm really good at my job and I'm really good at being a dad and a husband. Like that's what I'm good at. And that's what I do every day. Like I go to work and come home and I stay in a good place.
And I'm glad, man. And that's why, once again, that's why one of the big reasons I do this, because I want somebody to get something out of this. I want this will touch someone, right? Maybe it will, maybe it won't, right?
Yeah, I don't know. Like I can be really, really deep and really, you know, make it all sad and stuff like we all can, but just know like everybody's past is so just filled with garbage that you can just really flush it if you choose to and take out what you want and keep what you want.
No, absolutely, man. Absolutely. The only limits you have are the limits you place on yourself. You know, those are the only limits you have. Yeah, yes, I'm not saying the road is easy, right? Nothing is easy. And guess what? If it's easy, you probably don't want it, right? So nothing is easy, but it's attainable if you really want it. If somebody want to do something right now, there's nobody in the world that can stop them if they're determined.
Agreed. And that's why we have these amazing people that have not listened to the no's and become great humans and individuals for us. But it's just so easy now, though, for our generation too, to get all these false these false dislikes or these false comments of people they don't know. And again, that I can't relate to that because I've never had to deal with that in our life. You know, getting judged by comments or people making social media posts on you. So, and that's just something I don't understand because I'm not a part of that world, but it's a real thing.
And I'm glad you said that, because I'm gonna tell you another thing. Listen, I blame social media for a lot of things, right? You know, I use it. It's a good thing to have, right? But I'm gonna tell you the one thing that has ruined this generation. When we was growing up, if you said something to someone, you had to see that person. You know, like say me and you. If I said something about you and you heard it, I had to see you, or you had to see me. Right? You had to stand on what you said.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to say something to me and it get back to me and I walk up to you and nothing's going to happen. Like we're going to talk about what you said. But nowadays you got all these telephone, Twitter finger tough guys, right? They can say all these things because they know they'll never have to stand on it. You understand what I'm saying?
I do.
And that's what ruined this generation. If you say something, then you got to stand on what you said.
Yeah, and so now that even takes, you know, a lot of the generation, and I'm talking of men because usually it's a man thing, but like how do our kids want to do that now? Like I'm not thinking about this right now talking to you, right? So if this is you and me growing up and, you know, we're 16 years old, we would confront each other and we'd either fight, we'd wrestle, but we'd resolve it.
Right.
Kids today wouldn't even know how to have a face-to-face confrontation.
No.
Like, they don't even know how to react.
They don't even fight anymore.
No.
When we was growing up, some of the best friends I've made started off
100%
conflict, fighting. Look at you and I. We never fought, but we was in conflict, right?
Yeah.
But we got over that, and look at us now, right? But what happened in today's world is oh, you disrespected me, now I gotta kill you.
Yeah.
There,
Yeah. And that's not
there's
even,
no in between. Like people are scared to get punched in the face, right?
yeah. Yeah.
It's just a different generation now, man. But you know that's where we come in at. That's where people like us, you know, come in at and kind of listen. There's different ways to handle conflict, right? Everything doesn't have to end in you losing your life because
No, I mean,
you got your feelings hurt.
yeah. And we're not talking politics, but on the
No,
politics note, it's like,
Mm.
you can't even have a conversation with
no,
somebody and be on the other side. It's like, I'm very open-minded. Like, I'd listen to anything you have to say, and
Mhm.
would never be offended. I mean, I
Right,
agree with you, but I'm not even going
Mhm.
to argue the point.
Mhm.
But a lot of people won't even let you express their feelings, and they get upset. It's like,
Right.
you can't have conversations with people anymore. So it's
Yeah,
easy. As I get older, I say less. Less is more for me now.
people are stuck in their echo chamber. Like unless they're around people that think the exact same way or that they don't know how to handle it, right? So I don't care if you don't feel the same way. Just because you don't feel the same way about something that I feel about it doesn't mean that we're enemies. It just means we don't agree.
Yeah. Well, like you and I were talking, and I said something. You're like, "Well, I disagree." Do you know how often, like, you can't say that to people all the time?
Right.
Like, okay, well, you disagree, then our conversation's over.
Right.
What do you mean our conversation's over? But
Good.
that's what
Good.
I'm learning to adjust to, even in my world, right? Like,
Mm.
I'm very open-minded, but I've learned to listen and just I don't give the feedback. There's no point because they're already made up their mind.
Yep.
And it's taken me time to get there too, right? Like, my voice doesn't need to be heard on that topic. It's not
Yeah.
that big of a deal.
Yeah.
So
The biggest thing, my biggest sign of maturity is I just walk away.
yeah,
It's
absolutely.
not worth. I used to die on every hill. That's the expression my counselor told me. Like you you die on every hill. Every hill isn't worth you dying on. I just walk away. I don't have to engage. You know, it isn't that important. You know.
No, you don't have to have the last word.
No.
That's the growth part. It's like, I'm good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, cool. That's how you feel. All right. It don't affect me. I'm good.
You lose some sleep over it. I'll move on. I'm good.
Yeah,
I'm
I'm
good.
good. I'm good. You know. Tell me how that works out for you, buddy.
Well, you keep a good poker face anyway, so you wouldn't know either way. So, and you know that's true. I mean, you have a good poker face. You get care of it. So,
I mean, I do what I can, man.
yeah, no, you do a good job with it, man. No, I'm proud of you and what you're doing, man. So, I mean, I think this is great. And listen, if people can just want to spread the word about your podcast, I'll do what
Mhm.
I can do because I think what you're doing is great, brother. I really do, and it's needed.
And I appreciate it. And on that note, once again, you know, Talks Pop Podcast, you can download it anywhere you download your audio podcast from, Apple Podcasts, Podbeam, anywhere you download your audio podcast. There's also this video version that's on YouTube. My YouTube channel is Talks with Pops Reloaded. And I have I'm on all social media platforms, Talks with Pops Podcast. Definitely leave a comment, share, subscribe. Once again, Mr. John Burns, amazing person, amazing dad, amazing husband, definitely a good friend. Conrad, I love you, bro. I wish you nothing but continued success, man. And I look forward to seeing you again very soon.
Love you back, Gunny. We will talk soon, brother.
All right, brother. Talks with Pop Podcast. We out of here.
Listen to it.